and welcome to another episode of Marriage Alive. We are your hosts today, Sharice and Dian Madera, and today we have as our guest the Manswells, two lecturers from the Caribbean Nazarene College. We have Mrs. Barbara Manswell and Dr. Anthony Manswell. Welcome to an episode. We're very excited about today's session.
And what about a more practical question? Like, for instance, how do you, as a married couple, decide on situations where there's a disagreement or a huge loggerhead between you all when it comes to a major financial decision? How do you break that tie?
Maybe I want to set the stage for that question by again suggesting that this question, keeping the connectivity of all that we've been saying, and it does connect with the questions that we answered before, that would be a very good reason for couples to understand that initially in a marriage, they must have particular type of communication and particular understanding. It's not like business organization where you set policies so that you can have policies to work with each other, but in a sense it's like a financial policy for couples where they have a particular understanding from the very inception of their marriage about how they're going to handle their finances. If that is in place, it is much easier to come to the table again when there's an impasse to say, what had we talked about before? In that context, if you can do that, you can do one of two things. You uphold the original idea after communication, or the couple can make the decision, perhaps we need to modify this based on the current circumstances. That would become the new way that the both of you have now agreed that this is what we need to do. It may need communication in the context of listing the pros and cons. For example, if you wanted to buy a house deal, and Sharice said, no, we need to pay our loans. I'm just speaking hypothetically here, this is not their situation. But if you had to do that, then you would have to sit down again and begin to give reasons why you believe a house is better, why you think it's better to pay off the loan. Where are we financially now? Can we handle both or one? Kind of a thing, and you start doing exactly. It's kind of like a sales pitch to your spouse, because you're trying to come to the best solution of what would be best for the both of you. When all is said and done, it's still the both of you in it. If you get the house and it begins to be a strain, both of you are still in it. If you try to pay off the loan, you don't have a house, nowhere to live, and those kinds of reasons, you really have to talk about it, bring it to the table again. The bottom line is, not only financially, but in other areas of marriage, the key is that people really should be mature in their responses in marriage, and that also is critically important for financial management when there are impasses like that. The mature way in which the couple decides to handle it will reap or yield the benefits that they're looking for in terms of the outcomes. And if the outcomes then are basically win-win situations, the couple will find it much easier to be able to make a decision as to whether the house or the paying off the loan, or the both aspects, or one before the other, would be important. But the key is both persons must come to that. If there is a contentiousness in relation to what decision should be made, and that is a prolonged contention, then you've got extreme problems of added conflict, and some people unfortunately take it all the way to divorce, which is not what one wants, because there's no win-win for it. But coming to the table and communicating and sharing thoughts, feelings, ideas, giving pros and cons so that the best decision can be made is the best way to handle an impasse in financial matters.
And just one thing I wanted to ask as well regarding that, also the willingness to seek a third party, someone who might be more experienced in the area of finances as well.
Competent.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I would gladly bring my brother in.
But as well as Christian couples, I think there's always a place to say, okay, we have different perspectives here. let's spend some time together or apart praying about this and seeking God. If this is a really good opportunity to buy a house and the market's good and we have the money for down payment or we can get a loan, mortgage, whatever, seeking God, if that really is the route to go. If we want to consider renting, then what is that going to mean, and how many years down the road before we buy a house will we legitimately be able to pay off our loans? Those kinds of things. And as you seek God together, I believe God can bring you a unity, and that's, I mean, ultimately trust and unity can only be in Christ, and as Christian couples we believe that. So
What I'm hearing, based on all of your answers, is setting the right foundation. And
very
everything builds on that. Like there's no hurdle that cannot be crossed if it is that you focus on first things being first.
that's
Absolutely.
I like that. First things being
That's
first.
great, yeah. And it's kind of like, it almost sounds legal, but it's kind of like if you've got that foundation and you've got a contract, the nature of caring for each other would suggest that the contract should not be breached. If it's breached, then quote unquote we've got a couple legal problem. I mean, amongst the couple, of course, that has to be worked out here.
I have one more question. This one is pertaining to the season that we're in. So we know economically there's a lot of changes that's been taking place during the pandemic, and we have a lot of people losing their jobs. So this is the scenario. My husband has lost his job and is feeling depressed about his inability to support his family like he used to. How can the other spouse, the wife in this situation, how can she assist, or if it's vice versa, how can a spouse help the other spouse in a situation like this?
And again, I mean, that's an appropriate question, and I think it hinges on a lot of the responses that were given before. If there is trust in financial management in a couple, this is like a thesis statement here, then it should follow equally so that if hard times come to that couple in the context of the question that you asked, be it male or female in this context, we tend to say men tend to feel it more if they don't have a job and they're wondering, I need to be provided and all of that. If my money is your money and your money is my money, it is not that your spouse, a lady would need to understand, it's not that your spouse does not want to work, it's that he's lost his job. In that sense, if she's working, it should be no problem really for her to understand that as a contributor in the relationship financially, that what she's making is still also part of them, and that would work vice versa. So that's very important. I think also at the same time, as crushing as it is, a lady would need to understand that key choice of words will be very appropriate for such a time, because a man having this idea of feeling the weight to be provider and having lost his job, I would need to know that his wife doesn't see him as just some sort of a lagging behind kind of a person, feeding off, quote unquote, the good of the land, but that she helps him to understand that, you know, it's okay, we are in this together, and I'm with you, I understand what has happened, and try to help him, psychologically speaking, to overcome the weight of this idea of being provided but not being able to financially contribute at that point in time.
And it's really, it would be a balancing act. I think it's harder if a man loses his job, and I say this cautiously, it's more challenging psychologically for a man to lose his job than a woman, because a man's identity and self-worth is built up in that job, working, providing. And a woman, it's not that a woman doesn't work, but if she's working at home, she can be equally fulfilled as working outside the home. And so a woman's sense of worth in working isn't always tied to a resource or cash benefit. And so, and that's not to say that the man's isn't, but a man is wired differently in how he perceives that. And so it's very important, as Anthony said, in terms of choice of words, that the wife continues to encourage the husband, not to make them feel like they're less of a person because they don't have a job, and not to make them feel guilty that they're not out doing something, finding something to do, but to encourage them in whatever aspect that they can to do some kind of a work or whatever they're wanting to pursue.
If I can give an example of what you said. For example, when we first got married the first year,
Yes.
we were in Canada, of course, at that time. I could not work for an entire year. She was working teaching. She wasn't the top breadwinner. She was the only breadwinner, me not being able to work. So during that time, I think she did very well, even though it was difficult sometimes having to leave work, to go to work and leave me there and whatever else, thinking, oh man, we just got married, she has to work, I'm at home. But understanding the circumstance, she worked. I did what I needed to at home in the house, would pick her up, drop her to work, those kinds of things. During that time, her working did not become psychologically damaging to me as a male person, because we had that understanding that our finances were our finances regardless of which one of us would be working at that time. Of course, things changed, and then I was the one working and she was home. That did not make me feel anyhow at all, because that connected to the fact that she worked at one time, I wasn't. I was working and she wasn't, and it worked out beautifully, because it hinges again and it connects to the idea of pooling your resources, removing the idea of vex money. Does connect with the idea of, if you've got that trust, be it one or two of you working, it's still our finances that we have to manage.
Thank you so much. This knowledge has been really, really helpful. I know a lot of married couples, finance is always on top of one of the core issues that there's a source of contention between us. So thank you. Dean and I have enjoyed hosting this session. Thank you, Dr. Manswell and Mrs. Manswell, for being guests. And we look forward to joining in to another episode of Marriage Alive. Take care and God bless.